doctrine of the Trinity goes back thousands of years, with many debates and discourse on the nature of God. However, one view has been much more supported than the other views. This is what is called the Trinitarian doctrine, the belief that there is one God in three persons. Unlike other forms, this has direct support from the Scriptures. So let's just go ahead and start looking at some of these passages that support the idea that there is such a thing as one God in three persons. Starting with God the Father, and from my awareness, I don't know of anybody that would deny that the Father is God. But this is the most simple one, where you get throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, we see direct quotes of God being unique from other gods. This obviously has nothing to do with some people that would argue against monotheistic or polytheistic ideas of the Bible. That's not really what we'll be doing in this part, but really just showing that there is such a thing as God that is the creator of all things, and he's unique and different from all of the other types of gods that are talked about in the Bible. So we can look at passages like Isaiah 43:10, Isaiah 44:6, Acts 14:15, Hebrews 3:12, just to name a few. Then you see God as the creator of all in Isaiah 37:16 and Jeremiah 10 verses 10 through 12. The Father is attested to directly in passages like Matthew chapter 6 verse 9 and Isaiah chapter 63 verse 16. So, and then we can see Malachi 2:10 and Deuteronomy 32:6 really give us icing on this cake here. So, like I said, really no debate here. Pretty much everybody that would do anything about the Bible would agree that the Bible is setting up the idea of God the Father. Now, into the more debatable concepts would be about Jesus, the Son of God. God the Son, as it's argued. The most debatable part of the Trinity. So, all the way back to Arius in the 4th century A.D., was it argued that Jesus was created. But this view was shown to be wrong by all of the bishops and theologians at the Council of Nicaea in 325 A.D. In Mark chapter 14, verses 61 through 64, Jesus is questioned by the high priest. "Are you the Christ, the Son of the living God?" And Jesus says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Jesus is then condemned. The reason for this is Jesus is not just speaking some kind of gibberish view. He is quoting directly into Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Scholars like Michael Heiser and Alan Sengel have offered great resources on this. But in brief, Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 through 14 is about a son of man approaching God, the Ancient of Days, and God gives him dominion and glory and the kingdom, and all people serve and worship him. His kingdom cannot be destroyed. Many Jews in the Second Temple period interpreted this as two Yahweh figures. When Jesus claims to be this is why he ends up becoming condemned. Going further, the book of Hebrews also easily supports the divinity of Jesus. The writer quotes many Old Testament passages applying them to Jesus directly. Quote, "Let all of God's angels worship him." End quote. Paul in Philippians says that all the knees will bow to Jesus and all tongues will confess Jesus is Lord, further supporting Jesus' divinity. Icing on the cake, I feel, is when you look at passages like John 1:1, John 1:14, and John 10, in correlation to John 3:16. John 1:1 tells us directly that Jesus is God. John 3:16 says is Jesus saying that he is the only begotten Son of God. This is important because in John 10, Jesus claims to be one with the Father. He is questioned and quotes Psalm 82 for his support. What is Jesus' point from Psalm 82? Well, the Greek word monogenes, meaning unique or kind, Jesus is unique to the other sons of God that are talked about in Psalm 82. But he quotes Psalm 82, "You are gods," in verse 6, to support other divine beings, but he is higher than they. Lastly, we'll be looking at the Spirit. Here I will argue that the Holy Spirit is a person and is God. First, we can look at passages like Micah 2:7, where he asks, "Is the Spirit of Yahweh impatient?" The passage, as it continues, gives personhood and abilities like of the persons like to be being impatient, that are only attributes that can be applied to persons. Also, the Spirit speaks in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verses 1 and 2. The Spirit of Yahweh spoke to me, and His word was on my tongue. 1 Kings 22, verse 24, helps to conclude this idea, that the Spirit can speak to people as God. How did the Spirit of Yahweh pass from me to speak to you, as it says in this particular passage? Personhood is also referred to in Psalm 51, verse 11. Quote, "Do not take your Holy Spirit from me," end quote. To show this is God, now all we would have to do is show its causal connection to God, Yahweh, the God of Israel, in this perspective. And now we can look at passages like Job 33:4 to support this, and it says, quote, "The Spirit of God has made me," end quote. The Holy Spirit is the source of grace and prayer, as told of in passages like Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. From these passages, you can deduce that this is not a just random force or an impersonal thing, as some may like to say. This is the personal God that now indwells into Christians, as told throughout the New Testament after the death of Christ, as Christ says that He will be sending an helper to us after He dies and resurrects. Paul tells us that God's Spirit indwells the human temple now. This is one of the most famous passage of this is when we see the Pentecost and early Acts, as God's Spirit comes to live among human beings in the same way the Old Testament temples that Jewish people built for Yahweh, and Yahweh would come and live inside that temple, even though, yes, it would say things like no temple can hold Yahweh. The Holy Spirit now comes to live in us in the same way that God would live in that temple. This is another support for the Holy Spirit being God, because this is now, as even Paul even goes deeper into, it's now God living in us, right? In particular passages, Paul will say things like, "It is no longer I who live, but it is Christ who lives in me." Now, there are versions that kind of snip in here. A lot of people kind of look into modalism, which tries to kind of talk about three modes of God, as in, like, maybe it's that God is one, but He can only be one at a time. So in this passage, He's the Father. In this passage, He's the Son. In this passage, He's the Spirit. However, there's clear verses that show that to be incorrect also. For example, like the baptism of Jesus, right? As in, when Jesus is being baptized, the Father speaks from heaven, "This is my beloved Son, listen to Him." And then throughout that, the Holy Spirit comes to Jesus in the form of a dove, so that all parts of the Trinity are right there active at the same time. And this shows that modalism is false. Another verse that would show modalism is false would be passages to the sort of after Jesus resurrects, and He tells them about baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. All applicants of the Trinity here are here, and you can just see it all throughout the entirety of the Bible itself, the 66 books, or if you have a canon of 82 books, or 73 books if you're Catholic, or whatever it may be. But this just continues out through the entirety of the Hebrew and the Greek Bible, and it's just continued to be supported to this day. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos like this, and let me know what you guys think down below.